Welcome to City 1016 podcast. My name is Lokesh. We've spoken about nostalgia. We've spoken about so many other things. We've spoken about social media. And of course, once in a while, we also get you some interesting guests on City 1016 podcast. Now, today, we have Nikhil Taneja, who's joining us, who's a writer, who's a producer, and largely a storyteller, I would say. He has been a Gulf kid for some years, and he's worked with Film Companion. He's also worked with Yash Raj, and now he's the co-founder of Yuva. So he's in the studios of City 1016. Welcome, Nikhil.
Thank you so much, Lokesh, for making this happen. I remember the last conversation we had very fondly, and I'm so excited that I actually now get to sit across you in the Dubai studio and have a conversation. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
First of all, I'm very, very happy and very excited that you're doing something really interesting called Be a Man Yaar, which is your new series on Yuva, where you're interviewing some of the most celebrated people from different walks of life, actors, stand-up comedians, Vicky Kaushal, Nasruddin Shah, Zakir Khan, Nakul Mehta.
Yeah.
Tell me where the idea started. You're basically exploring the idea of masculinity with all these celebrities. So how did the idea germinate?
I mean, the show is, we call it the chat show about positive masculinity. Mm-hmm. The idea really came from, I think, and I've spoken about this with you, I think, the last time. So at Yuva, we do something called the Yuva Roadshow.
Right.
Where we go across the country, where we meet young people in different campuses. At this point, over the last 5 years, I've been to over 150 Indian campuses, IITs, IIMs, AIMS, NITs, NIFTs. I've been to over 35 Indian cities, met over 10,000 young Indians.
Are we going to tell the biker jacket guy story again?
No,
we're not. It's okay.
But what I can tell you is that, every year that I go, I see that the topics that young people talk about are pretty much the same. But the spectrum on which they lie on those topics are kind of changing, right? And so as an example, gender is something that, always kind of comes up. When women talk about, and this is just the insights that we always get, when women are given a safe space, young Indian women in campuses, they always talk about how difficult it is to be women in India, right? Unfortunately, that's just always the case. Whether it is harassment, whether it is, them being told that because you're a woman, you have to learn to cook, or etc., etc. It always comes down to identity. However, at the end of every single time a woman speaks, she always shouts out and talks about another woman who's there for her. Here's my friend over there, because of her, I've been able to survive. I want to give a shout out to my best friend. If she wasn't here, I don't know what I would do. There is this beautiful community, this sisterhood, this allyship among women that you see in campuses, which is so honest and authentic and beautiful. On the other hand, when boys talk, either, of course, they talk about careers, which is like the number one that I've been asked. There's pressure on me to study, to make it in exams, etc. If they're not talking about them, if they're, they typically end up talking about love. And the reason they talk about love is because that's the only emotion that boys are. It's okay for boys to talk about. Dil toot gaya, heartbreak ho gaya, ladki ne chhod diya, etc. The boys who actually open up, the topic that they talk about, and this is across the country, is loneliness. How there's no one, for them to talk to, or no one who can listen to them. They don't have spaces where they can express themselves. And when they say it, you don't hear another boy from somewhere coming to the stage to hug them. Unlike the girls, there's always hugs at the end of what girls are speaking. But very rarely do you see that, after a boy has spoken something very hard about, put themselves out there, been vulnerable, but no one's really coming to hug them. And that's, every boy is speaking about loneliness, but no boy is reaching out to each other and saying, I'm here for you. And it's not that boys, don't care about each other. I just think that they don't know how to show it. I think that's the case even I felt when I was growing up.
Also, we've been conditioned.
Right.
So then, is that the reason that you?
That's where I think I learned that if we need to have more conversations, I mean, if we really need true gender equality in our country, it has to start with young people. But we cannot just talk about gender equality with women. It's a burden we put on women that this is a women's issue. Gender equality, women ko chahiye to women baat karengi.
Absolutely.
It's a human issue.
It's an allyship. Men have to come on board to be able to.
And not only that, Lokesh, I think the most important thing is men don't think that they're part of the conversation around gender because they feel like they're not affected by gender. And I am seeing day in and day out, young boys not knowing how to express themselves. And that also happens because we don't talk about gender. We don't bring men into the conversation about gender. They don't realize that they're affected by the same patriarchy women are being affected by.
So tell me one thing. So now, of course, you wanted to include men also in the whole conversation of gender.
Correct.
So that's how the idea germinated.
Pretty
But
much,
I also wanted to understand, like you could have gone and spoken to people in campuses as well, but you chose to talk to celebrities.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because when celebrities speak, the
So-
impact is a little more.
I love this question because, so for the last 5 years, we have been doing a lot. We do these open mics, which we call open heart mics,
Right.
where we get all kinds of young folks from every gender to come and express themselves. There's a lot of videos we have put out of young boys expressing themselves, and they end up getting reached. Some other young boys resonating with them. We do something called the postcards of kindness, where in campuses someone just writes a very kind letter to someone they don't know, and then we go to another campus and we give them out, and then some other boy somewhere is seeing them and being like, wow, this is so sweet. Somehow friends have, people have connected with each other. So we try very hard to create this really positive community. But it only gets so far, right? You have a video sometimes that ends up getting 100,000, 200,000 views, and you'll have all of these lovely comments, but it's not getting media attention, And I myself, over the last 4 years, have been speaking a lot about masculinity. But again, I know that I can only get so far with what it is.
No, you're so right, because recently Brute, in fact, covered your interview with Nasruddin Shah. Everyone seems to be talking about it. Masculinity, you said that you've been talking about masculinity, so that brings to one of my first few questions that I thought of, because I speak a lot about masculinity and I speak a lot about gender equality, and I identify myself as a fierce feminist.
You and me both.
The two of us here.
Yeah.
My question to you is that there's so much of conversation around gender these days. We're talking not only the two genders, the binary male and female. We're talking about non-binary gender. We're talking about transgenders. We're talking about demi-genders. We're talking about agender, people who don't really identify with any gender. In a world where we are having so much interesting conversation around gender, does masculinity have a meaning? One, and if it does, what does it mean to you?
Such a great question. Unfortunately, Lokesh, one of the reasons why we are still at that precipice of having conversations about other genders is because we are not willing to accept or take accountability of the gender conditioning we have had in our own bodies.
Fair.
Women again, we just spoke about feminism. Thanks to feminism, a lot of, and I'd still qualify this by saying, in a certain kind of urban progressive space, women get it. They are having these conversations. They are very aware of what gender conditioning is, what it does, how oppressive patriarchy is. At the same time, they're not even part of this conversation because they think this is a women's issue. Women have now, through allyship and sisterhood, learned to support each other, learned to be there for each other, learned to have independent lives. They realize they don't need to be married.
True.
They don't need a man to kind of have self-worth.
Right.
On the other hand, men are still leading their lives, doing engineering and MBA and doctors and lawyers with the expectation that one day they're going to provide to the woman that they are going to get married to. If the woman says, I don't need you to provide anymore.
Right.
I am happy to be on my own now. I can fend for myself.
Right.
And then the man is like, wait, so what does that mean? Wait,
what's my
what's my
value add?
purpose? Because their self-worth is coming from being the provider.
Right.
But suddenly when you take that away from them, and unfortunately in our society it leads to anger, it leads to violence, it leads to sometimes mental health pressures on themselves, which leads to mental health issues, which leads to anxiety, depression, and so much more, right?
So then, do we have a definition for masculinity?
Yeah, but that's what I was coming to, because which is why the only understanding of masculinity in our society is that of toxic masculinity, because it does get toxic, because we are not having conversations about empathy when men are younger, when they are boys, they're asked to be men, they're not asked to be human first. They're not even given the opportunity to learn and understand their own humanity, and because of that they learn these terms and without knowing that these are masculine things and these are oppressive things. When a boy is told कि तुम्हें engineering करनी पड़ती है तो अपनी hobbies छोड़ दो, leave your hobbies. You want to do art, you want to do drawing, you want to do painting, you can do it only if it gets your trophy in an exam. Otherwise you're not allowed to do it. You can't do it for pleasure, you can't do it for fun, you can't do it because it makes you happy.
You have to earn one day and provide
because
for
you have to earn. Your self-worth is measured by your worth in your home also, and in society is measured by the numbers attached to you.
Great.
It's the ROI that you're going to get at some point.
So then again, my question is, can we dare define masculinity in modern times? Or because see, we all understand the traditional definition of masculinity as providers and protectors, because we were hunters and gatherers back in the day. The men went out, hunted, got food for the family. The women were bearing children and they were the nurturers and all that. We are no more hunters and gatherers, right? We are all out there making a living for ourselves. So does it then kind of make sense to have old traditional definitions of men being providers and protectors and women being nurturers? Or do we need to like kind of de-shatter that?
Lokesh, the fact that you understand this or I understand this is actually our privilege.
Right.
We have the self-awareness. We have learned this, whether it is us making that effort, whether it is somebody who taught us in our lives. We have the privilege of this understanding. Most people in our country and in the world, I would say, don't. Most people are just like machines following the paths that have been given to them. They are on those paths without even realizing how oppressive those paths are. In my own life, I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety when I was 31. I was at Yash Raj Films at that time. I was possibly one of the most successful young producers in the country in that sense. I just worked on Y Films. We created out of the first 10 web series made in India, 4 were produced by me, and they're all super hits. They're all today on 60-70 million on YouTube. And I thought that depression and anxiety happened to those. This is my understanding back then. Happened to those whose life is not good. My life was perfect, and I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety. I had to quit my job. I had to take a sabbatical from work for 6 months, give time to my mental health, go to therapy to understand what the hell happened to me. And what I learned through therapy was that everything that I was going through in my life happened because of my masculinity. Because I was following a path of gender conditioning, which told me that wait, you've reached all these milestones. What happens after you hit your milestones? There are more milestones. Because that's what men are told. That you get your big house, you get your big car, you get your big designation. But once you get it, what then? More of that. Which means that you have to restart. So you're not just entering a race. You're just running and running and running and running without any self-awareness of where are we stopping, where are we breathing.
How did you recalibrate the entire thing after therapy?
By recognizing the fact that it was masculinity, it was my gender conditioning that was putting me on this path, and then trying to unlearn that and recognizing my humanity. And I think when we have this conversation, is masculinity important to talk about? Yes. Why? Because until you have that awareness, what is gender doing to you? Can you ungender yourself? I don't think you can. At this point, unless you've been taught at a very young age what it is to be human, you first need to recognize what being a man or a woman or any other gender in our country doing to you to be able to get to a place where you're learning your humanity. So I think unless you have accountability or even awareness about your gender, I don't think you can truly learn what it is to look beyond it.
Fair. So you're saying that it's interesting and it's important, imperative to like kind of identify your gender and what it is doing to you so that you can work on it and then ungender yourself in a way.
Correct.
And also I feel going forward, because I'm always like kind of looking for solutions in conversations. And I think what I understand is that while we are raising kids, and especially boys, we need to make them aware of their humanity first and then their gender, in the sense that we need to tell them that empathy, sensitivity, all these emotions are not gender-based.
We need to break out of all the patterns that we have when, kids are young. And I'm not just talking about boys, right? Why is it when you're giving gifts to a young child, if they happen to be born in a female body, you get pink gifts. You happen to be born in a male body, you get blue gifts.
Right.
If if you have to have role models, women are told, well, you can look at Sarojini Naidu, you can look at at this point Michelle Obama, or etc.
Right.
Men are told men as role models.
Right.
Why can't it be that role models for men can also be women, right?
Right.
Why do men only have to look up to other men? Why can't they? And that's why, even though in your home it's your mother who raises you. I mean, thankfully, largely, and fortunately now that's not the case. Hopefully, a lot more men are becoming better fathers and better parents. But largely, at least when I was growing up, it was the mother's job, right? It was the mother's duty to raise you. And yet, most men are not learning from the mothers because the mother's labor is seen as, okay, that's what the mamta hai na, wo to maa ka farz hai. It's a duty. Whereas what the father is doing outside is always looked at as a role model. That you are going out and you're earning for the family. Isn't she turning into a better human being?
I guess that also happens because I think we focus a lot of attention on who's bringing the bread, who's getting the money.
Exactly.
I think as a society we are very capitalistic, and we, young kids identify that the man is getting the money and hence he becomes more important. Also, the wife is always constantly saying, पापा को आने दे, उनको मैं बताऊंगी, या पापा से पूछ लेना, for something as small as going on a trip. So I guess kids identify where the power really lies, and and they don't even learn the nurturing or the empathy or the sensitivity of the mother, because that's taken for granted, as you rightly pointed out. My next question to you, Nikhil, is that when you shared the teaser with me of Be a Man, I was like, this is interesting. This is going to be very, very interesting, because you're, again, like, taking eminent personalities from Naseeruddin Shah to Vicky Kaushal to Zakir Khan. These people are the true influencers, They But what I really liked about the interview was that you did not ask specific questions on masculinity. You did not ask about positive masculinity and toxic masculinity. You kind of integrated their lives and then let that speak for itself. You spoke about their relationship with their fathers. You spoke about the struggles and the challenges they face, be it in relation to their bodies, in relation to their friends, women around them. I love the fact that you posed that question to Vicky Kaushal, that Katrina Kaif is a far more successful actor. How does it feel to be married to a more successful lady? Was this conscious, that not to ask specific masculine questions and to kind of weave into their stories?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm so happy that you recognize this, Lokesh, because this was a very thought through point of the conversations. We're not even calling them interviews, right? We're calling them conversations. If you see even the format, there's a couch, and we're all both sitting on the same side of the couch.
Right.
These are very intimate chats.
Right.
And the reason, everyone talks through. This is what I believe in. I think the problem with important issues is that we try to drill them down as messages, which people don't care about. Unless you try to make important things interesting, people are not going to care about the important things. They only care about the things that are already interesting. And that's the problem with the society. People are caring about the interesting because the important is not interesting enough. And what we try to do at Yuva, and this is my life's belief system, that unless you make important things interesting, you are not going to be able to reach out to young people or any kind of people in a language that is accessible to them. So for me, it was extremely important that I don't preach with this, that we are not giving messages. We are just... Nakul said this beautiful thing, he says, if we need more gender equality in the world, instead of just having more feminist storytelling with strong women, we should also have feminist storytelling with vulnerable men. And that's what we're trying to do. Can we just have empathetic conversations? Can we just talk about it? Can we just be real for a change? Most interviews, as you would know, happen for promotional purposes. It's someone coming to talk about something with an agenda. Sell a movie, sell an ad, something, whatever, right? But very rarely do you have conversations where just people are sitting across as human beings and talking about life, right?
So how did you identify these people? Like, was this your wish list, or there were people you got in touch with and they couldn't really make time for you?
No, so
spill some beans for us.
So this was again 15 years of having worked in the industry. I knew that I had some favors to pull. Like, there were people who knew me and kind of have a little bit of understanding of the work I do, or maybe appreciate that work. And then you wait, when can you use that favor? So this was the last 3 years, whenever we wanted to do something with Vicky, I know Vicky, like, as an example, since before he became Vicky, right? Before Uri and before he was a big superstar. And I knew that I could use a favor from him. But anytime in the last 3 years, you'd be like, no, wait, we are waiting. We're holding this favor for the big conversation.
Well, but he thinks that the room lights up when you walk into the room, and he's scooping you up in big hugs and all that. So I'm sure he's going to be more than happy to come back on the show again.
You know what I can tell you, Lokesh, one thing that has, I immediately, when I was doing this show, I knew that we had something special. And I'll tell you how. Because in the middle of the conversations, whenever we'd break for like card change or whatever it is, every one of the people in the conversation would look at me nervously and saying, मैंने कुछ गलत तो नहीं बोल दिया, मैंने कुछ ज़्यादा तो नहीं बोल दिया. Do you think I said too much? Do you think, because I've not said, and I realize it's because none of these people have had these conversations anywhere before.
True.
Right? Before he even did this conversation, he gave me a big hug when he came in, and he said, Nikhil, I'm not doing this because, it's a conversation, it's an interview. I'm doing this because I want to learn something about myself.
Right.
Because I know that ye baatein I can't have with my friends, I can't have with my brother, with my family.
And he ended up saying that in the interview that
said the same thing,
that I listen to myself, I'm learning a lot about myself as well.
And everyone, and it's not just Vicky, it's everyone. It's even, for that matter, a Karan who said, at the end that this was not what he's used to. And to their credit, every one of these men have taken this opportunity to speak their heart out. And the reason for that, Lokesh, ultimately comes back to the time that I also realized that I was doing it with the intention that we're creating this safe space where, hopefully they express, I also get to express. They also came with that hope that I hope today I get to say something real that I have not been, that I have inside of me, but I'm not getting the opportunity to speak of.
Couple of questions now. So, is there anyone that you wanted on the show but they couldn't really make it?
So I mean, I'm really fond of
I was hoping a Farhan Akhtar or maybe a Javed Akhtar, because they are such flag bearers of positive masculinity.
So it's very interesting. I want to get Javed Akhtar, literally one of the season 2, number one, the person literally on the top of the list is Javed Akhtar, because he's literally created the angry young man, and I want to talk to him about that. What went into the making of that. But no, this was the list because in season 1 I wanted to get people who would have some context to me, who would trust me, people who would know that I'm not doing this for the sake of getting the bite.
There's no agenda.
There's no agenda. People who would come with that intention, to be honest. And every one of the people over here, again, fortunately, I have either they're friends or I have some relationship with them outside of just work, and every one of them trusted it. In season 2, now that we have the show out there and the show speaks of itself and is an honest space, now I can reach out to a bunch of people I may not necessarily know and say, here's what we have tried to do in season 1. Would you like to be a part of it?
Listen, let's turn the tables in season 2. I'm going to be on the other side of the couch. Ask me as many questions on masculinity because I have so much to talk about.
I can see that, Lokesh. I can see that this
because
is already...
when you spoke about blue and pink, blue and pink were not even the gender colors that they are today.
Correct.
In the 1920s, America, the sales and the marketing region went completely crazy because they, at that point in time, actually, pink was the color of men and blue was supposed to be the dainty color, and hence it was associated with women.
Wow.
But they wanted to change and they wanted more sale to happen, and that's the reason they completely came, all the marketing, big brands, they came with the whole project of associating pink with women so that they could do more sale, and blue with boys. And that's how parents, started shopping more clothes for their kids.
Can you imagine how these small things start and then become conditioning?
And the fact
suddenly,
and there are so many videos these days of gender reveal, pink, blue, and I'm tired of them. Like, how do you even when the child is not born, you are associating colors with gender that completely, like, how messed up are we in our head that we are associating colors with gender, It just breaks my heart when I see all these gender reveal videos.
How that manifests is that I remember when I was growing up, anytime I really like pink. Okay, I wear it quite often. But when I was growing up, even though I have had some really healthy friendships and whatnot, anytime I'd wear something which was lighter, at least there'd be a remark. Oh, pink. Oh.
And even if there's a remark, why do we feel bad about it? Because I wear pink and people say, hey, you look like a woman, and so be it. I mean, what is wrong in looking like a woman? Like, I don't really understand, because tomboy as a concept is pretty much celebrated in our country, but any effeminate man is kind of looked down on. So
Nasir said this beautiful thing in his episode, which he's like, if you're only tapping into the masculine side of yourself, you're a bore.
Exactly.
Everyone has a feminine and masculine side.
Absolutely.
And he said, great actors as well as great human beings are those who are able to tap into both.
You are a great artist only if you're able to tap into both sides of your existence. My last question to you, and Nasir Sahab said it very interestingly, and he said it very briefly because he then, I think, started talking about A Wednesday and other films that he has done. But you asked him that, why a film like RRR or Kabir Singh, they're like the biggest grossers in the last 2-3 years. And he said that men are insecure. Do you think men are also not participating in the gender conversation because we are kind of insecure? Because ultimately, if you're talking about gender equality, you have to talk about gender parity. When you have to talk about gender parity and equal opportunities, then you'll have to step down from the pedestal that we have put ourselves onto, and you'll have to share space. We'll have to make space for the women. Do you think we have that insecurity, and that's one of the reasons that men are not participating in the conversation?
You know what? So my thoughts on all of these? First of all, whenever I ask these questions, I'm also curious to know that I'm also trying to learn that are you going to tell me something that will make me like, हाँ ये correct है. So it's
did I tell you something that made you feel कि हाँ ये correct है?
No, you just said the pink and blue thing, and I was like, so true. When you just remarked and said that so what if even if there is a remark, absolutely. So what?
Yeah. So what if you look like a woman, man?
Yeah,
embrace it, enjoy it, celebrate it.
It's such a lovely thing, I mean.
And I tell you why, because of the patriarchy, the men are celebrated. There is a difference. Men are here, women are here.
Yeah.
So when women are being tomboys, they are being like men. So it's a step up for them.
Yeah.
And because men are there, and when they become effeminate, it's a step down for them, and that's the reason they are ridiculed.
Yeah.
It's as clear and as simple as that.
I love how you have put it. So I mean, to answer your question, there are two sides of it. It's difficult to put all of this in like a short answer, but I'll try my best. There is power to it, right? What you've also been speaking about. There is a power conversation.
Right.
Everybody gets attracted to this idea of masculinity because of power.
Right.
Because patriarchy has ensured that power lies in the hands of men.
Right.
And that's really what it is. But power is not. I mean, power is such a stupid concept. I find it absolutely ridiculous as a concept. And to be able to chase power, once you get power, you have to just spend most of your life in trying to retain it. I have never seen, and I can promise you, Lokesh, I've met some of the richest people in India for whatever it's worth, and I've never seen one person not being anxious or not being or being completely happy. You have so much money, you have all of this power, but you are not able to enjoy 1 minute of your time
because there's so much to lose.
Because you're always just in the fight to retain this power.
Right.
On the other hand, if we just stop worrying about this concept of patriarchy, about power, and just be human and kind of lead from our hearts versus our minds and versus these capitalist notions of what it means to monetize every minute of your time, as men unfortunately are mostly taught to and are forced to and are expected to. Maybe things can get simpler. So, of course, one of them is a very big power conversation, because of which, masculinity becomes a thing. That anytime I see somebody represented on screen who's like this, man who's hyper masculine, who's saving the girl, who's a hero, as I said in the interview, right?
Right.
A hero we are the only country in the world where the lead actor is called a hero.
Right.
It's
Not
a
the lead
hero's
actor.
journey. Yeah, it's not even like a journey that you have to take. For me, and it's sorry to digress, but whenever there is a women-led film in our country, it's called a women-led film only because it's a warning. Listen, इसमें hero नहीं है, इसमें heroine है,
Right.
but heroine cannot be hero.
Right.
So you have to kind of give a statutory warning. Women-led film.
Right.
It's a film that women are leading, so don't go in expecting a hero moment.
Right.
Whereas women can also be heroes.
Exactly.
But that's what it's just so much complicated to it. The second part of it, and this is the thing that I think I'm trying to do with this show, is that where there is power, there's also ignorance. There's also just a lack of understanding on the part of men. It's not just about accountability. It's just about the lack of self-awareness. लोग कहते हैं कि people should educate themselves if they don't know better. But I always feel like, I think empathy is a privilege. I think education is a privilege. If somebody doesn't know any better, you can't look down on them and say you're stupid for not knowing better and you're stupid for behaving in the way that the institution has forced you to behave. You have conversation with them. You bring them into the issue.
So power and lack of awareness is something. But you haven't answered my question. Do you think men are insecure having these conversations?
But that's what I'm saying. I think the insecurity stems. Of course, they're insecure. There is no doubt about it.
Right.
But the insecurity stems from
the power that they have.
From the fact that they might lose power.
Right.
Or from the fact that they don't even understand this insecurity.
Right.
That for them, this is such an essential way of being. So I try not to, work around, which is why, toxic masculinity is I even hate that term, because I try not to label. I try to figure out how do we get beyond these labels into the humanity of people. I try to understand
I think
them.
these labels are kind of also important because they kind of identify the problem as it
Correct.
is instead of
Correct.
just beating around the bush.
When you're talking about the institution and the problem, absolutely.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about human beings, I think we need to go beyond that.
I follow this guy on Instagram, and he made a very interesting, he's in the US, I'm forgetting his name.
Okay.
He made a very interesting analogy about toxic masculinity. He said that toxic masculinity is like a river, which is pure, does the job, all those things, but there are pollutants in the river.
Okay.
And that makes the river toxic.
Correct.
Similarly, masculinity, like a river, has pollutants in it
Yeah.
that we need to clean the river. We need to clean masculinity. Masculinity in itself is not toxic. It's the pollutants, the patriarchy that has polluted the whole idea of masculinity.
No, you're absolutely right. And Lokesh, I'll just add one thing to it, which is that I feel like, because there is a lack of self-awareness, people feel like everybody, and for good reason, they feel like they're attacked, and for good reason. They should be. We should hold men accountable. I have started holding myself accountable. It's only then I went to therapy and I became better, and I hope and pray that all men I think therapy is the most beautiful thing. If you're a man and you're listening, please go and you'll learn so much, you'll unlearn so much. It's beautiful. At the same time, I just feel the way to bring more people into any concept, any conversation that you want to have is to try to look at them as human beings. Beyond that label, look at them as stories.
No,
and
you're
the
right.
stories,
Absolutely.
and the stories that they were given when they were born. I was given the story of masculinity. You were given the story of masculinity when you were born. And we have unfortunately just been following those stories without having to live our own.
Right.
But, for me, it's important to bring people in through conversation versus, and I love talking about these things as you said, problems and epidemics.
Right.
But I don't want to judge human beings through these labels. On the other hand, I would rather use empathy as a way of bringing
Absolutely.
them in.
No, that's very well put, and I think when we're talking about feminism, gender equality, and men should not feel attacked, because that's not the point of the conversation. We are not
Correct.
attacking a gender. We're attacking the system, which is
Absolutely.
patriarchy.
So well said.
So
Absolutely.
that is pretty much the bottom and the top of it, I would say. Before I let you go, because you're asking these interesting
I
questions.
just want to say that this is such a wonderful conversation. I'm so happy that I'm doing this because it's so nice to sit across another man who's invested in this conversation just as much as I am. So thank you, Lokesh, for everything you're bringing to this conversation. And I can see that you're very passionate about this.
I'm extremely passionate. I've been reading about gender and equality and all these things for years and years. And there's so much to say. There's so much to
We
but
need more
there's
men like you. We need them in the Middle East. We need them in India. We need them all over the world.
You asked very interesting questions about, the man who gives maximum warmest hugs, the man who... I'm going to ask the same set of questions to you, okay? The man...
I should think of these answers, actually.
The most sensitive man you have ever come across.
These are tough questions. One of the most sensitive men is on the show. It's Nakul Mehta, possibly the most sensitive man I know, because he is vulnerable and he's in touch with his humanity. And he's on the show. If you've seen that conversation, it's just me and him literally just like tearing up while talking to each other. He's a beautiful man.
Who is the most feminist man you've ever come across?
There are two. I would again say Nakul as one, but because I've already given that answer, I'll also name Varun Dugirala, who is another wonderful friend of mine. He and his relationship with his wife, he's also an influencer, he's a content creator, and his relationship with his wife, Pooja Johari, I would say that he's Pooja's husband. Pooja is such a cool person, and they are equal. And anytime I see relationships where both the partners are on equal terms, I just feel so happy. He's as much as a great father as Pooja is a great mother. They are there for each other, and I hope. I want to be that person when I also.
I'm going to look him up. I'm definitely going to look him up.
Yeah.
The man who gives warmest hugs.
Oh wow. You
shouldn't think so much.
I was
There's one celebrity who really hugged you.
I was going to say, I was actually thinking, is there anyone beyond Vicky? But it is Vicky. I've said that on the show. Vicky's hugs are, God, he told on the show also, right? He takes you in. He wraps himself around you. And I think it's it's a very Punjabi, dil to dil hug. It's not it's a human to human hug.
Right,
I love that about him.
Nikhil, you've been doing such incredible work with Yuva, and I think this Be a Man Yaar has sparked like a new conversation. In fact, in our office only, there were so many people who were talking about different episodes and all that. And I'm so happy that because we've been going back and forth about doing this interview, and I didn't want to do it on a Zoom or on a screen. I want to kind of see you in person and then share the energy. So thank you so much for doing such incredible work, and more power to you. And if I can be a fly on the wall in season 2, and I mean it, if I can just offer like water to the celebrities, I would love to be like a part of the whole process in some way or the other. So
no, Lokesh, I want to really thank you for taking the time off to do this. I'm so happy that I could do this, and I know that you've been trying to manage your schedule and to make this happen. I can see why, because you're just as passionate, and it gives me so much hope to sit across men like you, because we need to create a community of more men who are having these conversations, who are passionate about these conversations, because they recognize that the world only becomes better when all of us come together in trying to have these conversations. So thank you so much for being that person. You've been so kind and warm and so generous to me. And I just, one of the things that I really hope to do, I don't know, I mean, while of course the show happens, I want to have these conversations offline.
Right.
I want to go to campuses in India. I want to do this as events in India.
Right.
And I also want to come to the Middle East with
Right.
it. So one of my hopes, if not next year, then next to next year, is to come to do offline conversations in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Get a couple of these men and of course have someone like you on stage with me.
Absolutely.
And have these conversations for a bunch of people.
I would be more than happy to be a part of this.
We're going to try and make it happen.
100%, man.
Yeah.
100%. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Lokesh, for having me.
What are your thoughts of masculinity? Do you think we can define it in modern times or not? Do let us know in comments below.